When you win the lottery, anything is possible. But with so many options, what should you actually do with all that money? Real lottery winners have the answers. This is the hidden truth about where real lottery winners keep their millions. Number 10. A summer camp. If you wanted to store tons of cash, where's the last place anyone would look? A summer camp. That's where lucky lottery winner Les Robbins kept his. Before he won the lottery, he was working as a substitute teacher, and he loved it. Well, he loved working with the kids anyway. He didn't love the salary so much. It's not easy to get by on just $20,000 per semester. But his money problems were about to become a thing of the past. He was the holder of a Powerball ticket that won him the largest jackpot ever at the time. It was a whopping $111 million. The first thing he did was split his winnings with his fiancée. The couple isn't together anymore, but Les doesn't seem to regret giving her that money. The next thing he did was ensure he could keep following his passion for making kids happy. He knew he wanted to open the greatest summer camp the world had ever seen. By the time he was finished building, his camp had a swimming pool, a gym, its own stables so the kids can learn to ride horses, and, best of all, a mini golf course. The only other thing we knew he spent his winnings on is a Jeep. I guess all he wanted was that summer camp. He went back to substitute teaching in the year 2000, but it looks like he only did that because he wanted to. He hasn't run out of money yet, and his camp was still fully booked at that time. Some sources say it closed down recently, but others say it's still operating. But either way, it looks like Les found a great way to store his cash. It must feel great to invest your lottery jackpot into something that improves a child's life. But our next winner stashed his money in a way less child-friendly business. Number 9. Whiskey. We all know there's big money in whiskey, so it seems pretty smart to hide a lottery jackpot in a whiskey business. And that's exactly what Peter Lavery did. It was 1996, and he was working as a bus driver in the UK, earning just $300 a week. Somehow, he still found enough cash to play the UK National Lottery sometimes. And it's a good thing he did, because one of his tickets was a jackpot winner. He now had the equivalent of $12.5 million. If you can remember as far back as 1996, you'll know that was a lot of cash back then. A lot of the time, lottery winners spend their jackpot on useless things if they didn't have much cash before their big win. But Peter wasn't going to follow that path. Peter loved whiskey, and he knew that's how he wanted to spend his new fortune. He said getting his whiskey business felt like winning the lottery all over again. Instead of buying his own distillery, he formed a partnership with Cooley Whiskey Distillery, and together they created the Danny Boy Irish Whiskey brand. And this turned out to be a great decision because it got a lot of good reviews. This was his favorite business, but he also split up his winnings across multiple other businesses and invested in real estate. He now owns 30 properties in Ireland. Amazingly, all of this has been an incredible success. He's not only stored his lottery money very effectively, he actually tripled his fortune. He's not the only winner who decided to invest in his passion, although this next winner's dream involved a little more hard work. Number 8. The life of a cowboy. Neil Wanless and his family were having a pretty rough time back in 2009. They'd lost their house and were living in a mobile home, and his dad was forced to sell scrap metal to put food on the table. Neil was 23 years old and working as a cowboy. That was his dream. But there's no doubt it's pretty difficult to make money as a cowboy these days. He was worried that he wasn't able to help his family the way he wanted to. One day, he got in his truck and drove to the nearby town to run errands. Weirdly, the town is called Winner. Maybe that was what inspired Neil to buy a Powerball ticket that day. He used his family members' birthdays as his ticket numbers, and that turned out to be his lucky charm. He'd won, and on a rollover too. Neil was the only winner of a gigantic $232 million jackpot. Instead of racing off to collect his winnings, Neil and his family took an entire month to plan where they'd put that crazy chunk of cash. In the end, Neil decided he wanted to invest his winnings into his work because he just loved being a cowboy. So, the first thing he did was buy a huge 23 square mile ranch for his family, worth an incredible $9.9 million. He also bought a house for his parents and another house for himself. He even invested in his hometown, making sure to help the people there in many ways. He finally decided to sell his dream ranch in 2020, but not because he went broke. In fact, he stored that money better than most winners in one of the most expensive properties ever in the area. Even though Neil bought it for $9.9 million, it's now worth an incredible $37 million, and Neil is considered one of the richest men in South Dakota. That was a pretty unexpected way to store a lottery jackpot, but there's no doubt it worked. Here's another weird way to store lottery winnings. I'll give you a clue. It's normally used to store power, not money. Number 7. Batteries. Jason Fry had worked hard all his life. Just before his big win, he was working 3 jobs at the same time. And they weren't easy either. He spent his days pouring concrete and digging wells, and he still found the energy to work as a bartender at night. Sadly, even though he put all that work in, he had so little money that his house was about to be repossessed. As if that wasn't bad enough, he also had a second child on the way, and all he wanted to do was give his kids the best life possible. He'd only bought a few tickets in his life, but I guess the pressure made him think one more couldn't hurt. That thought was a real stroke of luck, because that ticket won him a $47 million jackpot. Suddenly, his money problems were over, and he figured he could go on a spending spree. So he bought a Mustang, a boat, a motorcycle, and a big house. But we all know impulsive spending isn't a good way to store your money. What changed? Well, one day, Jason realized he was being pretty stupid. A Mustang wasn't going to help his kids have a good life, so he changed the way he was spending. Instead of buying stuff, he started buying businesses. The first one he bought was a golf driving range, which soon started earning an impressive $300,000 per year. But his more important business purchase was inspired by his friend, who owned a Battery Plus store. Jason copied this friend and became a franchisee himself. Once he saw how successful the business was, he bought 2 more. Now, he's kind of a local celebrity, and his Battery Plus stores guarantee that Jason's lottery winnings aren't just safe, but are actually growing. But what if you win the lottery and don't need the money? The next lottery winners on our list were a couple who had enough money of their own. So, how did they choose to store their fortune? Number 6. Saving lives. This story probably needs a little warning. It's pretty sad, but it does have a happy ending. Paul and Sue Rosenau almost had the perfect family. Sue worked at a research institute when she wasn't being a stay-at-home mom, and Paul was a heavy machinery operator. They obviously weren't rich, but they were very happy with their lives the way they were, except for one terrible family tragedy. 5 years before their big win, their granddaughter, Michaela, was diagnosed with Crab disease. This rare brain condition mainly affects babies and toddlers, and tragically, there is no cure. It always ends in death. The family couldn't do anything to save their little girl. She was just 2 years old when she died. 5 years later, Paul noticed that the Powerball jackpot had rolled over to a record-breaking $180.1 million. He almost never played the lottery, but that seemed worthy of a try to him, so he bought a ticket. Then he forgot about it. Luckily, the lottery draw came on the TV while they were watching. Paul rushed to find the ticket while Sue shouted the numbers to him up the stairs. He walked back into the living room with his ticket as they were reading out the Powerball number. Like all the others, it matched. Paul had played pranks on Sue before by telling her they'd won the lottery, so she didn't believe him this time. Finally, Sue agreed to go check the numbers. They had no internet at home, so they drove to Sue's office. But Paul was right. He'd won the jackpot. Paul's accountant friend was happy to offer them advice. The couple chose the lump sum so they could retire early, which meant they took home $88 million. But, as we mentioned, they were pretty happy with their lifestyle. They only needed a little bit of cash to retire happily. They knew a better place to put all those millions. They put it into a foundation called the Legacy of Angels, all in honor of their late grandchild. The foundation finds much-needed research into the terrible disease that took the life of little Michaela. They're investigating treatments for Crab disease in babies and toddlers, and they even hope they might find a cure. And it has been an incredible success. Their research has led to a lot of knowledge about how to treat the terrible condition, which might never have existed without the foundation. Paul says they might even just be a few years away from a cure. Without them, it would have taken decades to gain all this research. They might soon be able to say they saved the lives of thousands of children. If putting your lottery winnings into saving the lives of babies isn't a good idea, then I don't know what is. By now, you're probably thinking, these jackpots are huge, and you'd be right. Big American lotteries have recently made it even easier to win smaller prizes, like $1 million, so you know there will be a lot more of them. How do winners of those smaller prizes store their cash? The next winner on this list might have the answer. Number 5. Pigs. You heard right, pigs. This is a pretty crazy story. Sue Herdman started buying lottery tickets after a fortune teller predicted she'd soon come into money. Sue was a hairdresser, so there wasn't much chance of getting rich off her business. The only way she could think of was to win the lottery. And, in a way, you could say the fortune teller was right, because Sue did win the lottery. She took home 1.2 million British pounds. That's just over $1.5 million. But Sue wasn't interested in a life of luxury. She wanted something more simple. So, she bought a pig farm. The farm is located in northeast England and has over 7,000 pigs. With 1,000 piglets born every week, it's like winning the jackpot all over again. Sue seems pretty happy with her life knee-deep in mud. There's no doubt that's a strange life choice for a millionaire, but Sue isn't the only one who chose a kind of weird path. Our next winner did too. Number 4. A Subway. No, not that kind of Subway. This winner was Yancey Hicks. She had been working at McDonald's for years, dreaming of one day being his own boss. But there was no way that would ever happen unless something changed in his life. And it did. He won the Illinois State Lottery and suddenly had $1 million to turn his life around. He knew exactly what he wanted to put his money into: a Subway. Now he was the boss of a restaurant of his own. And it was a great way to store his lottery money because it's still a success today. Here's another winner of an even smaller fortune, but where did he decide to stash it? Number 3. A trade. Robert Salo is one of those lottery winners who broke a lot of stereotypes. That's because when he won the lottery, he was still a teenager. The Brooklyn teen was dreaming of becoming an electrical engineer. But sadly, even though he was already 18 years old, his family hadn't got the money together that would have allowed him to study and achieve his dream. Maybe he was holding on to his dream when he bought a $2 scratch-off ticket. Either way, it was a great decision. He won $1,000 every week for the rest of his life. We all know most teenage winners blow all their cash on stupid purchases before they even think about smart ways to store their fortune. But Robert was not one of those teens. He knew exactly where to put that cash. He'd invest it in learning his trade and following his dream. At $48,000 a year, it was just enough to pay for his studies to qualify as an electrical engineer. He completed his studies and went on to follow his dream, as well as improving the lives of his parents because they didn't have to feel guilty about not having the money to help him do that. And his trade earns him money even today. Do you think Robert is the only teen who is smart enough to put his lottery win in a good investment? We've got another one for you. But where did this winner choose to put their money? Number 2. An investment in themselves. Ayanthi Fulliger was an 18-year-old from England. She was working as a waitress at the time, and she wasn't making a great salary. She was earning even less than minimum wage. But she had a dream. She hoped that one day she might become a successful lawyer. She was now old enough to play the lottery, so she figured she'd spend some of the money she'd earned on a Euro Millions lottery ticket. It was the best purchase she'd ever made. She watched the draw on the TV and couldn't believe what she saw. Every single one of her numbers was read out. She was one of several winners of the £102 million jackpot, but she still went home with the equivalent of $8.6 million. And that was enough. She already knew what she wanted to do with it. She paid for law school and passed. She definitely had cash left over after that. She took a year off to travel to Egypt, bought her parents a house, and replaced her old car with a new, sensible new one. But even with millions in the bank, she chose to live like a normal student with a good reason. She hoped she would one day have enough funds to open her own law firm. She kept a low profile, but some sources say she's worth about $10 million now. I guess you don't need any more evidence that she stored her lottery winnings in a really smart way. Most people agree that investing in yourself is the best way you can spend your money, so that seems like a pretty great decision. But the last person on our list put their lottery winnings into maybe the strangest place ever. Number 1. The lottery. You're right to feel a little confused here, But this lottery winner is known for putting his lottery winnings straight back into the lottery. Richard Lustig has won the lottery a whopping 7 times. The first time he won was back in 1992, just 2 weeks after his child was born. There's no better time to win the lottery than that, and he used the $10,000 to pay his hospital bills and do some renovations on his house. 10 years later, he won again. But it wasn't just once. He won a whopping 4 times, and he wasn't about to stop there. His 5th win was his biggest ever at $842,000, and he still won again after that, twice. In total, Lustig had won over $1 million. But with 7 wins, he's got to be the luckiest person ever, right? Well, he doesn't think so. He's now the author of a small book called Learn How to Increase Your Chances of Winning the Lottery. It's not the catchiest title ever, but it sure does the job. In the book, he describes the things he used to do to increase his chances. He says you should research your numbers to see if they've won before. Play the same numbers over and over until they win. And lastly, invest as much money as you can into buying lottery tickets. And that's exactly what he put his lottery winnings into. There's a lot of debate over whether Lustig really is a lottery guru, or if he's just a scam artist trying to get you to buy his book and courses. We'll leave it up to you to decide if his system really is a system, or if buying loads of lottery tickets is always going to guarantee a win eventually. These winners knew exactly where to keep their lottery winnings so they were safe, growing, or doing something amazing. But these ones didn't get the chance. Instead, they were struck by the lottery curse. Check out what happened.